It's working. I think. I think it's working. Oh yeah, that's me. Oh no, that's me. How do I share this now? How do I share this? Dear YouTube, put your share button somewhere I can find it. Stream URL. That's not what I need. The fun share button. You know what? You know what? Bayformers Discord will. Is this a roundabout way of doing things? Yes, it is. Hang on a second. That didn't happen. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna go to my own channel in a web browser and sort this out. gonna find myself here. While I find myself, oh wait, the share button's on the share. Hang on, where's my live feed? The share button's on the top right. It's the curvy arrow. It's alright, we're good at this. Copy link. Streaming it, paste link. I did it. Now let's get those dollar bills rolling in. Origami King, my goofy uncle, stabbed my grandpa with a longhorn steak knife. That's unfortunate. That's hard to recover from, but you know, if we all hope for your grandpa's recovery, then eventually your grandpa will become more powerful than we can possibly imagine, and we need to please stop praying for grandpa. That's a meme. That's an old meme. I like it, though. It's funny. Picky Peeves, prepping for a final. Excellent. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to state right now before I get carried away talking about steak knives. I was on a Hasbro Q&A call for the Transformers brand, and I want to share my notes. I wrote a lot of notes, and I weighed the options, and I decided this was slightly less work than trying to re-paraphrase all my notes onto a Twitter thread. So let's do it this way. Eric! Sup! So I'm going to give it, like 2 minutes. I'm going to drink this now flat, La Croix orange, and then, I'll get going. I gotta figure out how to position my, windows here in a way that I like. I like this one here, and the notes here. This is better. This is better. Knuckle sandwiches are crunchy, but, they got a lot of marrow in them. Marrow's good for you. You can cook it in a soup. Really, you take a knuckle sandwich and you boil it into some, you put it in some boiling water, big pot of boiling water, let it render out. Granted, you lose a lot of the sandwich properties, but you get a soup. And a lot of people have the debate, you know, oh, is it a sandwich? The real debate is soup or sandwich. Not soup and sandwich. Transformers! They are robots in disguise. Check my my Outlook here. Outlook. Let's just see what the stream's doing. Do they actually tell me things in this? Stream health. Okay, stream health. All right, we've got. I see General Techno. I see Sam Wellbell. Yeah, Eric. I mean, it's true though. You can prove me wrong. Knuckle sandwiches are crunchy. You got to have good molders. Is soup a sandwich? That's an interesting question, because you can have croutons. You know, French onion soup, very close to being a sandwich if it had a bottom layer. Because it's got the meat, which is the soup and the onion, and it's got the top, which is that cheese and the crouton. But you need a bottom crouton, and you need a crouton that can hold shape. Origami King's having a moment, so that'll be some fun color for the chat. I'm going to get going on this thing, I think, pretty soon. So, Hasbro Q&A call. You've seen these before. Fan sites are reporting on them. I think TFU Info was tweeting during it, getting some notes out there, too. I'm just going to... Bread bowl. You're on... Bread bowls are basically sandwiches. We win. So this thing is a Zoom call with quite a lot of people, and it is, thankfully, very organized. Where, especially this time, it was stated outright. Everyone gets one question. One of the Rachel Marketing goes through everyone's name, calls them, says you have a question, etc., etc. And it generally runs quite well now. It's an enjoyable experience. and it is with the Hasbro team that you've seen on all those streams. So it's weird because now it's less like, oh, I'm in a Zoom call with some Hasbro people. This is cool. Now I'm kind of like, oh, I'm in a Zoom call with those Hasbro streamers. I remember their memes, which is awkward and weird, but I don't mind. I'm down with awkward and weird. Yeah, the yellowing issue. I know I have some notes about that. I'm going to go top to bottom. So the yellowing issue is in fact the third question asked. That was, I believe, Jeremy Dennis of Transmissions, who hit that right away. He got called on and had that ready to go. So we will get to that really quickly. I'll just start going. So first question had to do. I didn't. Some of these I wrote down the questions. Most of these though I didn't. I just wrote pertinent info because I was trying to go fast. So it's a question about whether there would be like sublines inside a legacy. I think, and the answer was there are no sublines inside a legacy. However, Buzzworthy is a target capsule program which can contain legacy branded characters like Silverstreak. And niche characters in selects can also happen with legacy branding like Lift Ticket and Black Zarak. So it's not that legacy on mainline is going to have like all these little sub brands to collect, but it's like the legacy brand can follow characters into other exclusive lines. A lot of the wording I did try to write down word for word because I find that stuff interesting. So things like that's how you can say like there are no sublines in legacy, but legacy can show up in a target exclusive capsule program. I think that stuff is interesting because it's more of how the sausage is made. There was a question about obviously spreading the Legacy Stunticon Deluxes across multiple waves, of which there was some general chatter, but the main meat I got out of that was that this is no confirmation. It is simply that it's not out of the question for a bundle pack to happen like it happened with Studio Series Devastator. So that's not confirmed. However, it is not taken off the table entirely. So I think it seems likely, good 20-30% chance there's probably going to be a Menasor box set sometime in the next few years because they'll have the toolings and there are, colors to do Menasor in. Now, the recent yellowing of white plastic. So Mark Marr said that particularly via Instagram, he was alerted to this directly. He has not himself experienced it very much, but he passed a lot of the information and images along to engineering, specifically Lindsay. He assumes it won't be an ongoing problem, and it was likely small batches of faulty product. And part of the reason why this could have happened, this is a hypothetical, but this was stated, the team hasn't been able to go overseas to inspect product in person on site due to the pandemic, and that coupled with new vendors may have led to this kind of scenario. I'll also clarify right away, I am paraphrasing off notes, so even when I say I'm reading a quote, legally I'm not. But this went on to there was a discussion across the whole team. It seems that PA plastic, the more durable plastic, is the culprit, and in most cases that is the plastic that is yellowing. So they mentioned later on, thanks to everyone putting all this info in there and providing tons of information quite readily, they were able to pinpoint commonalities basically on what was yellowing on their end, what was similar plastic types, what was X, Y, and Z. Sam Smith mentioned that UV resistancy is a standardized testing treatment for plastics with Hasbro. So UV resist, because basically the main thing is that yellowing is often due to ultraviolet light, like sunlight or ultraviolet indoor lighting, is what it was stated. So Sam Smith said that UV resistancy is part of the standardized testing treatment for plastics at Hasbro, both, with new vendors, there can be onboarding hiccups. That's where I was a little paraphrasing earlier on, but it sounds like the likely scenario, that being the simplest, is a new vendor came on, was working on a series of toys, and their PA plastic likely had some kind of issue that led it to be more reactive than it was supposed to. However, Sam Smith went on to say that, just to kind of explain how yellowing and plastic reactions to light can be just, interesting. Sam Smith has seen fluorescent light cause yellowing in the extreme long term on specifically a white plastic stormtrooper helmet that was at his desk for years. And the position it was at his desk and where it yellowed, it was unaffected by ultraviolet light. However, it was affected by fluorescent light, because wherever the fluorescent light hit it over the course of 3 years uninterrupted, it had yellowed, but where it was hit by daylight every day, it had not yellowed. So Interesting stuff. I wonder if that's how Techno. You mentioned it sounded like the info was getting a little confused out there on Twitter. I should probably eventually go out and tweet stuff about that too. But because it did get a little confusing between the use of the words, fluorescent and ultraviolet. But that's the layout of all the info they had. Evan mentioned what I said before, that because everyone in the fandom was sharing this in great detail, the Hasbro side was able to sort out some of the common denominators of what was causing the plastic yellowing. So that's what's up with that so far. It sounds like they are very aware of it. They specifically said, because some of the fan sites specifically said this, like they are definitely looking into this because they have big ticket items in the pipeline with large amounts of white plastic. Cybertron Metroplex and Starsaber, to name the two biggest, right? So that's the white plastic yellowing thing. And yeah, for spring, our toys will be destroyed either by the sun or man's hubris. That's, pretty much. Sam Wellbell, no toys are safe. Entropy comes for us all. Yes, there is a. I will say, no one brought that up on the Zoom call, and that is the easy answer. So I'm kind of glad no one went there. But moving on, someone then asked very simply, does Legacy Blitzwing's turret rotate all the way around? Mark Marr then said he just sent it back to the office and he didn't have it. And so Evan went to get his while he's doing that. Mark Marr mentioned Lenny Panzica worked on Blitzwing with possibly Hasui-san and finished it out to the end of that toy's release before moving on to G.I. Joe. Not the toy's release, but he finished the development of Blitzwing, Lenny Panzica did, before switching over to the G.I. Joe team. Then Evan came back and showed that the turret does rotate a full 360. So the turret is not locked. Eric, Mechanova King, what toys are turning yellow? Several. Cyberverse Deluxe RC is the first one I can think of. Kingdom Cyclonus has a yellowing component. Shatterglass Starscream has got something going on as well. It's not always white plastic, because obviously RC and Cyclonus don't have like pure white plastic, but they have a plastic that has been demonstrably growing warmer in hue. So it's like her I think it's her thighs, was it? They're going from a very pale pink to more of a salmon pink. Netflix Soundwave apparently has yellowing too. I will say, here, I got mine here. So where is Netflix Soundwave yellowing? Because I haven't seen it on mine. Granted, mine's been living in like a pseudo wooden cave. I need to check my RC as well. Because I don't doubt, like it sucks that a Hasbro guy said it, on a kind of baseline. Sucks for him too. But I don't doubt that there are ones that are not yellowing. So I don't think it is like necessarily universal. I would believe it is a batch issue. However, seems like it's a pretty wide batch issue. Okay, the gray plat. I'm guessing it's up here. I feel like I saw an image of these bits up here turning yellow. So mine seem fine so far. They obviously do look warmer than the silver paint, but that's because the silver paint is A, paint, and B, colder in tone. But yeah, it's a thing that's been going on. Legs, feet, and panels on the front of the alt mode. Yeah. Those are all the PA pieces at a brief hand feel, because this stuff all feels like the PA plastic they're talking about, which is that more the quote unquote unpaintable, the unspray paintable at factory plastic, which is the more durable pliant stuff. And yeah, like V Rider is mentioning, not just you, but some folks have also just been lucky. It hasn't happened to them. It just unfortunately seems like it's not the usual suspect of sunlight activating that process. It seems like something else is causing it, but we're not sure what. Unless everyone who specifically said, sunlight never touched my toy, is doing that thing sometimes we do when we break toys, where we say, I hardly touched it, when, like, maybe you rewrote that memory slightly. What happened? I've done that before. Yeah, G-Axis was brought up as well. Basically, a whole Elita 1 as well. A whole lot of toys with big white patches. Okay, oh my god, I'm on fire, says, I got the Takara release of Netflix Soundwave and haven't had yellowing for over a year, which lends credence to the notion it may have been a batch issue. Anyway, I'll move on from that, because I don't want to linger too much now that I've laid all the info out there. I was just checking in on the chat. I got some more to share here. This is, I mean, some of these questions maybe sound a little bit generic, but they are smart in that they bring about info bits, which I very parasocially record during these calls. So one of the questions was about the challenges of having a grab bag in Legacy, of having to get everything to work together in one line. So basically having 40 years of characters to pull in, like, what were some of the challenges of that? And Mark immediately said, like, it is difficult to pluck out specific characters, and team members on the Hasbro Transformers team have favorites in mind, to quote, thirst for certain characters to get a modern update, which is then backed by star power and fandom recognition, etc. And so what they do is they do a line plan that is based per wave. Not quite 40 years, I will say, but I mean, technically you go back to Diaclones, roughly, you can round up to 40 years pretty easily. So what they do with something like Legacy still is that they do a line plan per wave. So they look at each wave of each price point and look at, okay, is there a balance of color schemes, alt modes, character traits, gender, body sizes, etc. He specifically said gender this time, which is something I'd mentioned when I got to my question as a comment about how, I'll just say it here. I noticed very immediately, Legacy has got like one per deluxe wave, very unique, solid, not a retool, not a stick car female character in each wave. And I mentioned it sure would be cool to see that as the baseline going forward, as opposed to like the first two waves of Legacy. So, going off that thing about a line plan of having sort of a balance, you mentioned that, like, because this is still, you know, on shelves for kids regardless. So they'll have in Wave 1, for instance, for the kid who likes race cars, there's Drag Strip. For the kid who likes bugs and beasts, there's Kickback. And also, some characters don't make it into the line due to not fitting a wave as a whole. No examples were given, obviously, but that's one of the ceilings, it seems, that they will run into. It's just like, how does this fit in to our given wave scenarios? Sam Smith mentioned stylistic approaches as well, about how for Legacy they are trying to bring Transformers that were made by very different creators over the years to put all those visions into like one cohesive look and feel. Obviously we're kind of talking about Prime, and it was specifically mentioned that Prime and Animated are enormous outliers in Transformers to date, in that like they are very specific styles. And it seems like their thinking was that the Prime and Animated lines at the time were true to form, and that now they're bringing what was, to quote, stylistic cues back into a modern line. And I didn't bring it up because I'm not mean, but the whole time this was all going on, it's like, this all makes sense. The only thing that really sticks out is G-Axis's head is just straight up Derek Yoniger art that popped out of a 3D printer somehow. I yelled about that on an upcoming podcast episode. Not in an angry way, just in a very, like, but the Prime characters have noses kind of way. Chicken Soup, they mentioned Animated, because Prime and Animated, like, are very stylistically standout, in that they don't slide right into an evergreen look the way that some other lines may be able to. I am assuming when they said Prime, that was kind of doing a catch-all on Prime adjacent stuff as well. They never mentioned Rescue Bots, which I'm just realizing now. Then Evan went on to, in his words, bring up the not fun talk of budgeting and tooling money, where they will look at what they have and say, like, what can we partial this jet into? Which of the 37 Seekers can this become? His words. Evan has a good candor about him with this stuff, I think. I like his Instagram post quite a bit. He was engaging some folks very civilly about, like how Studio Series 86's Blur's face turned out. And that sometimes stuff just looks different from all the angles you're looking at up until it finally comes out. Then you see that one key angle and you're like, oh, dang. Oh, no. Gootfist thought this was going to be a gag stream because of Haha 420. No, I did that already. You can go and watch review number 420. But don't do that now. Listen to my stream, please. Stay here. Listen to me talk. So Evan, talking about partials, went on to say that for Legacy, they do have some kind of crazy experiments that they're trying out that we haven't seen yet, that they think are probably going to turn out pretty well. Just seeing Robot Lorekeeper, they redesigned Lockdown so many times, it's a miracle we've only had 2 decent-sized ones. And yeah, Techno, Evan is great. I mean, when I get to mine, I'll mention. I basically told them, like, the Instagram stuff they're doing is pitch perfect, fantastic. Rachel from marketing popped in also to say, like, that something the design team has to deal with is, quote, us marketers saying there aren't enough tier A characters. To which Evan then said, yeah, but sometimes we lie to you, though. So, I record that stuff not because like, ooh, hard info. That stuff is more like I like hearing them being human at each other. So, two of the marketers are always on these calls with the design team. It's always BMAC and Rachel, and they often are very down to earth while also being marketers in a way that I find quite fun, even if it doesn't give the answers we always want. Yeah, yeah, Eric. He basically she was kind of half joking, going like, sometimes we marketing people are going like, put Optimus Prime in the line, by the way, and then like, the design team might go like, oh no, we did laser Optimus Prime, it's perfect. I'm guessing that one, but I'm just thinking of the way that mindset might work. And then Mark Marr also added, Takara Tomy has their own thinking and input as to what characters and design decisions are important. So, for example, Legacy Knockout was an enormous back-and-forth process of the Hasbro team's wants and desires, Takara Tomy's wants and desires, and marketing's wants and desires. So basically redefining a character while maintaining its essence, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's like that's what I'm liking about the current Hasbro team, is that they are able to do a little bit of a wink and a nod thing as best they can without getting themselves in trouble, it seems. But yeah, it makes sense to me. You'd have marketing folks who are just like, look, I know you want to do this and this, but like, as a kid's line, we also need this and this. And then the design team might go like, no, we figured it out. It's okay. We got this, and this. Anyway, next question was, I think this one came from TFW 2005 site admin, who said, what made you go so big with a non-G1 character in Cybertron Metroplex? Because generally, the big Titan class figures have all been also, G1 up the butt as they can get. So this is, not just a Unicron Trilogy character, it's one from Transformers Cybertron, and it's Metroplex, aka Megalo Convoy. So Sam Smith took over that project at the detail stage last year, and he had a Metroplex with him there. And so what I can tell you that won't come across in any tweets or any reports, because you didn't hear it, is unless someone has an audio clip of it, I'm not sure. The sheer girth of ratchet joints in Metroplex was awe-inspiring. I don't know if any of you have messed with Unicron or Arc, but Unicron and Arc also to me represent a kind of new level of multiple different textures of ratchets, in working in concert. There was a whole lot of that in that Metroplex. So the idea for having Metroplex in Legacy is that the thematics of Legacy are hunting for Energon and Energon weapons. He said Energon weaponizers, which led to a question later on, but I think he meant Energon weapons and the whole weapon combination system they have going on with 5mm ports and 3mm ports. So anyway, they were thinking have a massive bot who is solely responsible for mining the Energon material that makes those weapons. That's what this Metroplex represents. And it's a stylistic version of Metroplex, not seen since the original Cybertron version. And also, they just wanted to do a massive robot. This Metroplex is 22 inches tall. It did that whole thing of looking like a small child whenever, he held it up in the webcam that Titan Transformers tend to do. And yeah, Origami King, the weaponizers thing, it seems like that was just like mixing words as far as, because someone asked about that at the end of the call, and they said like, yeah, we didn't mean like we didn't mean weaponizer deluxe is made of Energon. We meant the Energon weapon gimmick across things. Where was I in here? Oh, and the photo shoot for that Metroplex with Dave White in the lovely Legacy backdrop with all the delicious aquatic sand was done last week. That's the turnaround on those photo shoots. So that was interesting info to me. Also, he wasn't able to show this due to webcams, but apparently, in Sam Smith's words, Metroplex might have the best light piping he's ever seen, where apparently it works to the point of making it look like he has light-up eyes. So, light piping fans apparently get ready for that Metroplex, at least seeing one in person. Obviously, it's not like... I should encompass all of this with, like, at no point is anyone saying, and I'm sure you're all going to go buy Metroplex, because Metroplex is expensive. That came up during the call later on. Mark Marr mentioned that a major story point for him being chosen was all the Energon weaponry and the mining thing again, and that story was an initial driving point to launch the concept. And BMAC from marketing basically mentioned designing toys for kids despite adult collectors is the case here. And he also acknowledged parents aren't rushing out to buy $200 toys for their kids, but regardless wanted this to have a character that tied into the Legacy storyline, which seems like a really, basic storyline of we are looking for Energon to make weapons. So that was the whole thing there. Someone I'll go through some quickly. Someone asked about surprises on their end as far as feedback reactions from the community to Legacy. Rachel from marketing said that Legacy pre-order numbers have crushed War for Cybertron Kingdom pre-orders. BMAC said that they got a lot of critical feedback during PulseCon on the initial reveal of how some characters turned out, but they have dug around and noticed that the same characters, i.e., generally Prime RC and Prime Bulkhead, also had pretty high pre-order numbers and reviewed fairly positively once they got into fans' hands, which, you know, I could corroborate. Like, I know people have not given, like, it's not like across the board positive, but I've seen more than once the, oh, this looks better in person response on those two. Hopefully later today I get my hands on some Legacy. I haven't touched any yet. Then Mark Marr specifically mentioned that he had been working on Elita 1, and he was very up and down on the figure because Mark Marr, surprise, surprise, right? He has a very G1 informed and G1 oriented design aesthetic in his head. Like, that's kind of how he thinks. He's very inspired by G1 stuff. But with Elita 1, he was going out on a limb a little bit. He got a lot of input from various different parts of the team, which involved a lot of uses for the mold being planned on the opening steps. And he was very happy how much people seemed to dig that Elita 1, which was nice to hear, because I think that's a good-looking Elita 1. Seeing in the chat, I'm guessing someone, I'm not going to read all the way up, I'm seeing glad the translucent plastic issues have been acknowledged. That was, I think, the last Q&A call. They'd mentioned that. But it is worth mentioning that these widespread levels of quality materials issues do seem to be getting to to the design team and the marketing team specifically in a way that seems to be causing internal, information back and forth. I don't think they could ever really, like, get nitty-gritty on saying, like, and thus we have fixed batch number 28 or anything like that. But it seems like they are taking that input and applying it to the, albeit usually 1 to 2 year, delayed production cycle on a transforming toy. So, for instance, as Yokato mentions there, they can acknowledge the clear plastic issues, but they designed skids 2 years ago, so they can't go back in time to address that. And my understanding of plastics is they can't necessarily just sub in opaque plastic on the spot. That would require some level of testing for things like, if I recall correctly, shrinkage, and whether or not what is it, like, if it's close to a hinge, would it need to then interact with PA plastic differently or something? I'm kind of going off the top of my head here. Like 500 streams ago, there weren't that many, but way back in the streams, they acknowledged the stolen toys thing because someone brought it up, and like, what are they gonna say, right? Like, it's like, it did happen. It's annoying. That's about it, really. It's mostly for the marketing people. It's really annoying because they are trying to plan out their launches of information spread over the course of a year, especially without in-person events. So you can empathize easily with, like, yeah, that would be frustrating. But, like, what else are they going to do? Ben Yee from BWTF brought this up. I always bring up Ben Yee specifically. I write his name down because he always asks pricing questions, like, and not always, but he always asks questions where I'm like, I want to make sure people know. Ben Yee brought that up because that was a good question. So he mentioned Metroplex is an 18% price increase, and that he also has noticed there is a 12 to 13% price increase on Deluxes and Voyagers this year. So will there be a similar price bump next year? Ben went on to mention that he actually didn't notice this with Transformers immediately, but it was brought up in a conversation about Marvel Legends from their recent stream, and he then went back and looked at Transformers prices and realized the the level of price increase that was going on. So this was answered, I think, really well, because it wasn't answered with, like, no, it's great, everything's perfect, stop complaining. He basically answered this from marketing and said the price increases at Hasbro are across all action brands, not just Transformers, and it is due to really the most predictable answer, which is the combination of raising costs that are due to transit, due to COVID, and various other things happening across the world. The easiest things, obviously, being that the COVID affects a lot of production cycles that were taking place, where the end results of those production cycles would be starting to take fruit now. And I suspect that may have to do with not being able to go to the factories. I'm hypothesizing here. I suspect it has to do with not being able to go in person to the factories on one plane ticket, but instead having to have factory samples shipped back and forth overseas multiple times. And obviously with transit, the various different freighter events of the last year or so are all things, I said this last year, they are things, the consequences of which we shall be reaping in the near and probably continuing future. Just due to the scales and whatnot of how that stuff tends to work, from what I understand as a layperson who doesn't work in logistics. So Rachel said that she can't say there won't be more increases because they don't know what will happen in the coming year as far as world events. That part I'm adding in, but she basically said they can't say there won't be more, and it is really unfortunate. It did affect the Legacy line, and then she let off a legit big sigh after that. After Ben cut in to mention the thing about Marvel Legends. And she basically confirmed deluxes are $24.99 going forward. This is in America, obviously. And then BMAC from marketing mentioned first the kind of obvious part, which is a Titan class figure like Metroplex has more plastic, but then he mentioned that Metroplex has a thicker box, and that this is something I hadn't thought about. He said Metroplex has a thicker box, and as it seems that Amazon appears to own most of the cardboard in the world right now, that also affects things as far as their packaging costs. Apparently, Amazon's control over cardboard has heavily affected WotC and the way that they produce Magic cards. This is something I had not done a single lick of research on. So first I'd heard of it, but I was thinking oh, that's an angle I hadn't considered that also seems quite realistic. And would also explain the really unfortunate state of Magic having a price increase recently, coupled with some record profits that leads to a very bad, outward-facing public image. And this didn't come up, but I because I only had one question, right? I had been thinking about, because I saw it mentioned in the chat, the whole thing about pulse prices being a little bit higher all the time. I'd bet you a nickel that is so that Hasbro can run Pulse without North American big box retailers trying to kill them in the middle of the night. There's probably is a very strict discussion somewhere in paper and writing about not undercutting big box retailers and et cetera, et cetera. I would wager that. My other hypothesis, which will never be confirmed, is that I think part of the reason Hasbro Pulse also seems to drag feet a whole lot is I suspect that their logistics team is maybe a couple interns, and that whole initiative is a warehousing sales system being run inside of a corporation that develops that very product to send to other retailers, and that being a retailer themselves is something that currently they are, I think, not 100% equipped to do, at least with the speed of an Amazon or a Walmart, which are, horrifying meat grinder machines. Sea Striker 87, Amazon Cardboard, remember reading about that. Yeah, I had not heard about that, but it was stated in that kind of very specific kind of tone where I'm like, that's a thing. That's probably a thing. Who did this one? This was our own, Canada's own, Matt McNally, who said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, Matt did this a lot more eloquently, and with a lot more structure around the question. I'm going to caveman this into, was there a reason why Siege Soundwave is happening in Legacy versus Netflix Soundwave? And as some of us had predicted, the straight up answer is the Netflix capsule was a Walmart exclusive capsule. So the contents of that capsule makes it harder to bring the contents of the capsule into a main line. I think Evan then clarified exclusive capsules are under a timed window, so there will eventually be a period where molds under those exclusivities become more easily available to the main line, but no solid timing was given there. I believe Ryan from Cybertron then brought up, would it be possible to have Walmart just release another exclusive that happens to be cassette deck Netflix Soundwave, maybe just in different colors. I think it was said that's not impossible, but that I think that would kind of be on them selling the concept to Walmart specifically. It was also mentioned in the call Walmart exclusive cassette deck Soundwave versus VW Bumblebee 2-pack. And it was two birds with one stone. This was mentioned by a fan, I should say, not by Hasbro. That 2-pack idea. And then it was also mentioned just because Matt brought up the aftermarket price, and then other people brought up aftermarket prices on some of those Netflix figures. I say I mean Soundwave and Bumblebee, right? And Sam Smith mentioned, this is a bit of a tangent, but Sam Smith mentioned that retailers are learning how to deal with the bot-driven scalpers that were hoovering up exclusives during during 2020 and 2021 is what I'll say. Um, and that they aren't these guys are from Hasbro are not those retailers, obviously, but the very first thing said about those aftermarket prices, I don't know who said it, but someone was like, yeah, those scalpers had a lot of fun, didn't they? Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but um, they all kind of know how frustrating that is to deal with. Sizeway Prime 606, correct. I am not just memeing. I am relaying the information from the Hasbro Q&A call I was on. I just didn't. It's kind of like an ugly mess behind Spreem, so I put Spreem up because it's just like a few scattered figures and some Power Rangers board game large miniatures, and I don't know where I want to put them yet, and they were just living next to my head. Take a sip. Charles Hawkus, I also prefer Spaceship Soundwave, but I wholly understand why it is still frustrating. Especially because I realized the other night, I was like, this is Spaceship Soundwave with, like, I haven't seen if there are new paint apps on them, so I'm just thinking, like, this is Spaceship Soundwave with the damaged paint app removed and under the new MSRP. This is just a general feel bad, and I understand why he was a footnote in that Pulse stream. Then another thing brought up was open packaging. And I quote, the LeBron James syndrome happening to Silver Streak. As well as, like, Amazon putting, a legacy box into a bubble mailer and that thus, obliterating the structure of the box. So Sam Smith said that they are unlikely to return to plastic in packaging anytime soon on a company-wide scale. And that building solutions into the product themselves, one example being, instead of having ball-jointed heads, having a flat-pane swivel head, it makes the product and thus the consumer suffer more in the long run of actually owning the piece, right? And so closed box packaging is one solution that they are, obviously using, and that it is just an interesting discussion of, like, seeing the product itself versus closing the box to protect the consumer. And then BMAC from marketing mentioned that once again, because Transformers is more kid-focused, even Legacy, that is why Transformers still has open boxes. That apparently a literal study they did showed closed boxes were less likely to be picked up by kids versus versus open boxes. And that would also explain why the closed boxes, I think, are only happening on the higher price point stuff, because that's less likely for a kid to receive as, like, a gift from mom because they picked it up and said, ooh, look. So it seems like that's, something that is a continuing discussion, right? And then what else was there in here? Oh, also, it was restated, and I think that it's fine that it's restated, because I don't think this is, like, really clouding any truth here, that the pandemic affected a lot of QC problems, because it I think screwed with their usual processes in the last couple of years. And Evan from Design mentioned his first Masterpiece Tigatron had 2 left legs, and I wrote LOL after that, because I was like, well, that's a shame. That would be a bummer. I note he said first, so I assume he got that replaced, but that sucks. Someone also then mentioned offhand that they really like the legacy packaging, and we got names! Apparently Mario, Christina, and Amy are the ones specifically kicking butt on the legacy packaging. So, if you want to be able to attribute some names to that general, like, graphic design of Legacy, having that color scheme, those really poppy, like, purples to warms, having, like, all the different modes present in the artwork on the front of the... Apparently a lot of that is credit to Mario, Christina, and Amy from packaging, so good on them. Another big one, literally asked, do Menosaur's legs work with Combiner Wars? Oh, yeah, they should put that artwork in a book. I kept it... We'll get to mine. Because I couldn't ask 2, and I wanted to... I had selfish priorities, but we'll get to that. Or was I? Right. Are Menosaur's legs compatible with Combiner Wars? So the legs have unique arrays of tabs. So the left leg has 2 tabs out around the Combiner peg, and the right leg has 2 tabs in a different position around the Combiner leg, so that you don't mix up the legs and get the ankle tilts, I guess, going the wrong way, is my assumption. So Mark tried out a package fresh Combiner Wars Sunstreaker. I think it was package fresh. I might have just been making that up in my head, but I think he said it was package fresh. So he tried out a Combiner Wars Sunstreaker in that leg socket. It fit. He said that, if you're someone who's just taking photos and stuff, it'll work for photo shoots and stuff. It doesn't fit incredibly well. And so, like, if you actually are trying to play with the thing and you have, like, a Combiner Wars Deluxe in one of the legs, it'll probably just fall out. And that, it was not designed to take that peg from older toys. It just happens that it fits. The arms absolutely do not use Combiner Wars pegs. They have a whole different system. He also mentioned, because he had just had it set up because he was testing it out, that if you compress the arm and car on it back together, it looks kind of like in the animation when it's just a car slapped onto a limb, as opposed to, now it's a little more integrated and split apart. And apparently one of the initial design questions when they were developing this Menasor was, are we revisiting Scramble City with this? And Mark felt the Devastator approach of unique mechanisms was a better approach in this case for Legacy Menasor. Evan then said, legally we have to say it wasn't intended to work that way, but we can't stop you from doing whatever you want. And then Rachel from marketing added, that's the short answer. So there was some more of that fun marketing interplay. People were then saying, like, would we see this approach maybe pass on to other combiners? And then Mark Marr said, I know you guys want Superion, but it's tough getting all those jets into the line. Monzo brought up that Superion's limbs are technically just 4 of the same guy, and Mark went on to add that Silverbolt is on Mark's things-to-do list because he likes Silverbolt a lot. At that point, I noticed that we had a text chat in the Zoom call, and there was discussion of what to do with just a Superion torso, and someone brought up, like, the Beast Wars Superion combining with it, Energon style, so I was like, yeah, we should get a Silverbolt, G1 Beast Wars, shirt, pants, Energon combiner called Silver Bolt, and hopefully that made it to the upper echelons of Hasbro. Bouncing off of the lack of null rays on Core Class Skywarp, someone asked about future weapon packs. Because it was about a future product, obviously they could not confirm or deny, but using existing toolings to make, packs of accessories is not off the menu because they've done it before. So, this is where I got my little question. So I mentioned I think the first thing I said was it was really good to see, a unique, solid female character toy in each wave of Legacy so far, and that, nothing wrong with stick cars, but we got plenty of them. We made a combiner out of them. We can take a break from stick cars for a little bit. I told them I really liked what they were doing on Instagram, because it was showing us the design process, and with things like Cybertron Metroplex giving us hope for all kinds of unique characters maybe showing up in this line, like Rid 2015 Ground Pounder, who I held up like this because I want to see a better toy for this. And then I did my thing with my buddy here, popped him up and down. But I focused on the Instagram thing, and I told them, that I'm really into specifically the candor that they're having on Instagram of being ready to also share things they think didn't work out that well, and that it makes it a lot more of a, humans work on this line kind of interaction, but also that we are getting to see some amazing stuff. And I went on and on for about 2 hours about all the Ajima-san sketches that among other things, those specifically really lighting me up, because they are a side of initial design we've almost never really gotten to see that much, and I think it's straight up incredible, like that Ajima-san was able to, like, not just figure out, like, oh, here's how this shape will turn into this shape in this many steps. It is specifically the way he does it that is also informed by, experience in the toy industry. So he's doing it in a way that feasibly 2 years later leads to a similar physical product. And then I brought up my tweet. I brought it up on screen share on here and showed them that tweet I've been retweeting. I told them I'd very, shamelessly been self-retweeting it in different time zones as well, about saying, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to see an art book of a whole ton of Transformers design work and design sketches? And I specifically made the case that I know there could be a fear of this leaking industry secrets or something, but I truly think that, especially with stuff like Ajima-san sketches, you can't just look at that and then suddenly know how to design a transforming toy. That would be like, oh, I watched a cooking show, and now I know how to make souffle, because then your kitchen ends up on fire, unless you're already enough of a prodigy you didn't need to see that to know how intrinsically. So I basically made the case. I was like, This would be super cool, and I don't think you lose anything from doing this, and we only gain, and you only gain. And it gives us just an incredible insight to this process. Everyone on the Hasbro side is totally into it. And they mentioned that they had passed on the warm reception to that stuff on Instagram to the Takara Tomy guys, who were all pretty happy to hear that. So, some of them, mostly just they work on this brand privately at work, and their stuff doesn't really get out to public, and they aren't, pushing it out into public to go, like, look at what I did, And so I don't know if, like, maybe some personalities in there might not be that into their stuff getting so publicly shared and published, but it definitely sounds like on the Hasbro end they are super into that idea. They'd have to talk to Takara Tomy, though. That's like absolutely a Takara Tomy side thing that would need to be cleared up. But, in my head, I'm thinking, like, those Generations books already have a lot of design sketches showing up in them from much older stuff. So, hopefully, because I think we, in these Q&As, we have brought up more candid interactions and sharing behind-the-scenes stuff constantly. And I kind of think this Instagram stuff is because of a bunch of us in these Q&As constantly affirming how much we think that would be a positive thing. So hopefully we seeded another cool idea in there that could actually take fruit. And this is where a little aside, I have a perspective on what's realistic to seed into a Hasbro design team over like a Zoom call versus what is less likely. That's why I'm very like dead focused on something like this that I think is entirely feasible versus like trying to sit them down and listen to me why they should make, like, you should make a new, better punch counter punch for this reason, this reason, this reason. I think that something like this is like in the realm of feasibility. So that's part of the also I think is cool. Where is this? Yeah, so it was that. Next up, Brian Kilby was asking a whole lot about G-Axis. Mark Marr apparently had a whole lot to do with G-Axis. Not apparently, he did. Mark Marr also worked on the colors for the Thrilling 30 G-Axis nearly 10 years ago, and has since then, because of the research he did then, gotten more and more attached to G-Axis as a character. So apparently the Thrilling 30 G-Axis color scheme being bright, it was partly inspired by the Jetstorm whatever recolor, but it was also to partly brighten up the line-wide color schemes because at the time it was in a sort of dark color period due to Transformers Prime. During this, by the way, Brian Kilby name-dropped a fan fiction called Ravage 3 Bodies Evolution to a bunch of Hasbro people, which made me put my head in my hands. I got really mad. Also, I was quite pleased. I'll leave it at that. If you know what that is, you know. If you don't, then it's fine. You don't need to. So also, Mark Marr held up, he actually has some original G2 comic black and white pages of G-Axis. He's very into G-Axis. Apparently, Yuya-san, who has been on point with his transformations of late, was super on point with G-Axis's transformation. This led into a little tangent about Skyquake, and whether that could happen. And Brian Kilby mentioned that with Skyquake, you could easily do like a 3-pack of Skyquake and Diatlas and etc. Mark Marr did say, and not Mark Marr, Evan. Well, Mark Marr said, "Oh, I like Machine Wars." Evan then said, "Yeah, Mark brings up Machine Wars every single brainstorm session." So here's a little insight into how the design team's brainstorm sessions goes. Apparently, Mark Marr brings up Machine Wars a lot. So that's kind of cool to know. What else was there? There's something else. Oh, yeah, this is also important. BMAC from marketing confirmed that through Hasbro PR, they have reached out to Simon Furman to get him a G-Axis for free, and they want to get one to Derek Yoniger as well. So they are doing the work because people yelled about it to get Furman and Yoniger equipped and furnished with free G-Axises. So that was nice to hear. At this point, Evan from design, you could see his Transformers display behind him. It was like, 2 rows with LEDs on them, and they looked pretty cool. He then said, "Oh yeah, that's like a 20th of my collection." He then panned his camera up to reveal like 5 more rows up to his ceiling, and then panned it to the left to reveal that those rows extended into infinity on the x-axis. And apparently, it was mentioned that they're very happy with Evan working from home because whenever they need to know anything about a Transformer toy, he reaches to his left and it manifests in his hand, and he brings it on camera and says, "Oh yeah, here, I got it here for reference." So Evan from design is a mega collector. He is absolutely, to use the phrase, this is a tired turn of phrase, but it's true in this case. Evan from design is, quote, one of us, 100%. Apparently, Mark Marr rotates his display a lot. You know, my way. That's my nice way of saying I put things in stackable storage a lot. But Mark rotates his display a lot. Rachel from marketing confirmed that that's actually a thing called toy rotation, which was recommended to her for her 1-year-old, which I thought was a fun little aside. Manifest, by the way, is my paraphrasing, but you know that's how it works when you got a super collector who's like, they're like, oh, what's Cybertron Metroplex? What was the old toy like? And you got the guy who's like, oh, 1 sec. Yeah, he's about it's 12, 13 inches tall, etc., etc. So that was that stuff. We're over halfway through my notes. Someone asked if we will see previous line gimmick throwbacks going forward in Legacy, citing that Combiner Wars pegs are there, you know, in some form. 5mm and 3mm pegs are there. There's Power Link ports apparently here and there in Legacy. And are there any more Cybertron-related features on Metroplex? And this came up in the text chat as well about Drillbit. So Sam Smith confirmed Drillbit, the mini-con that was with Cybertron Metroplex, was there in the original concepting for Legacy Metroplex, but got costed out really early on. So there probably wasn't even a physical Drillbit ever made to go with the Legacy version. It was brought up by a ton of people that Core Class would be a cool place to put Drillbit, and all the Hasbro folks seem to think that was a cool idea. That also means it is probably a year or two out if it ever happens, because it seems like that's just, you know, sparking now. He looked over his Metroplex to count ports. Apparently there are 5mm ports all over Metroplex. There's some 3mm ports on the cannons, and those legs do have road system connectors. We don't know which of the 2 road system connectors they are, but we did confirm from one of the fans there, I think it was Monzo, confirmed that Siege Omega Supreme is the translator toy who has both road system connectors on him. Drillbit is not there because, just quote, he was costed out pretty early on. Which, like, I am translating in my head as he was a thing they removed to afford the rest of the toy at the price point. I had something else here. Oh, yeah. Mini-cons, mini-bots, and cyber keys are not present on Metroplex. Mark Marr then said that even though they don't pointedly put some of these things in, Takara Tomy does like to sneak some of these things in. Sometimes literally sneaking some of these things in without mentioning it, which may be stuff like the Minicon Power Links ports. And then Evan from Design went on to say that if anything, he would say they are simplifying a lot of these tertiary systems into 5mm and 3mm port systems that are more universal across stuff released in the last decade or so. I'm gonna take another drink. I'm getting scratchy throat. I don't know how they couldn't fit Drill. I think that with Drillbit, the way to think about it is, if you think about Drillbit less as a mini-con on his own and more as, let's say, like 6 to 12 components. Like, I know component count isn't as hardcore a metric as I used to think it was in the 2010s, but I think that's the easiest way to think about it, is he represents a number of components that now have instead been integrated into making Metroplex have more, you know, ratchet joint systems and etc. Keep track of where I was. This is going to come up later. I'm just going to say it now. At one point, it was also confirmed Metroplex's big buzzsaw wheel is ratcheted. So when you spin the wheel, it's like it's really satisfying. Like, you just want to run that up and down the back of your head to get a massage. I think that's when I brought up, I asked them why Unidentified Red Beast Robot was getting, like, absolutely masticated on Metroplex's box art. There's no comment, but I had to mention that. It was then asked about whether because they said up front they can't really say anything about Rise of the Beasts. Someone did ask, though, if Rise of the Beasts' date shifting by 1 year affected 2022 output for Transformers. Sam Smith said, you know, obviously they can't talk much about Rise of the Beasts specifically, but from a fan product standpoint, this doesn't affect Legacy or Generations at all. And for Studio Series, which they try to get, quote, as close to entertainment as possible, this actually aligns better with when Rise of the Beasts would be arriving in Studio Series. So if that movie came out this year, it sounds like, if Rise of the Beast came out this year, Studio Series Rise of the Beast would have been next year. Now, both the movie and Studio Series Rise of the Beast are happening in 2023 in the same year, and that's better for Studio Series. So that's what that was. There was a question about returning to in-person events. This was from Kevin Lucas, I believe, of Unicron.com, who basically said, I miss seeing you guys. BMAC said they're looking into, I think it was, I lost track of this one a little bit. They're looking into, like, several events happening at the New York Javits Center. BMAC says he does miss traveling and misses seeing people like Kevin in person, which was sweet. There was a thing, I think this was Monzo's question, about the recent core class combination sword accessories with Rodimus, Iguanus, and Skywarp not getting called out on the packaging. So what's up with that? And this is where he went on to say, like, also, did you say Energon weaponizers? So BMAC said that all the Energon weapons have combinable ports, and that the legacy instructions for those 3 toys show the sword combination, but it's not on the packaging because that kind of cross-sell is hard to articulate in 5 languages on the limited space of the core class packaging. At which point Monzo said, oh, that explains it, because Monzo had the Kingdom version of Rodimus, whose instructions don't mention the combining sword, and had not yet opened up to look at the instructions of Iguanus and Skywarp. And then Mark Marr went on to talk about the Energon system. So I think this is them kind of basically saying, like, yeah, we meant, like, Energon weapons. Mark Marr held up this ridiculous Energon weapon made of, like, 14 different accessories from Legacy that he just slapped together in a shape. And he said at first, when they started on the line, all the new weaponry that wasn't inspired by a particular existing weapon, like Kickback's gun, as opposed to Kickback's other things. Or unless I'm misremembering that part. But basically, anything that wasn't aping like an existing, weapon that they had in previous settings. That stuff was all concept art done in tandem with Emiliano Santa Lucia, and all weapons across all price points were to have like a 5mm port system. And then they started figuring out stuff like that sword, and then kind of like with the fossilizers, there are some weapon combinations that they figured out up front that do exist and are accommodated by where the ports are. But much like the fossilizer combiner, they aren't going to tell us what they are because they want to maintain the kind of creative environment of people just making up their own stuff. They want to add fuel to the fire, to quote that phrase, of the build and combination play of those weapons. It was also mentioned that it was nice to see the QR tech spec codes on the instructions for the core class toys because they couldn't fit on the packaging. BMAC mentioned that those QR tech specs aren't on the exclusive toys because that promotional pattern can't be provided in exclusivity to those retailers like Target and Walmart. He also mentioned, because Monzo, I think, brought up the bios on the other side of those QR codes are a little bit simple, a little bit short, as opposed to the longer ones we had back in G1. And BMAC said, we pay by the word for translations, and so that can result in the bios being a bit shorter. Which I had never thought about, but if they are paying by the word for translation, that does explain why a lot of our tech spec stuff of late has been, succinct. I have a few little one-shots here. I didn't catch precisely what this was in regards to, other than someone talking about that new Shattered Glass Magnus. Apparently John Warden had planted the skull head into the... I think that this meant the old Laser Prime Deluxe, but apparently John Warden was the one who had planted that skull head into the mold as an alternate way back. Also, according to Mark Marr, apparently Hasui-san loves DevCon specifically. So that's a bit of Hasui-san trivia. Apparently Hasui loves DevCon. Kingdom Rodimus, this is just me writing down whenever they were saying who worked on things for the sake of credits. Kingdom Rodimus, I think the Commander class one must have been, was John Warden and Yuya-san did that one. Mark Marr just did the deco for it, so there's some, put those in credit lists. And on the Cybertron Metroplex, before Sam Smith took over at the details stage, Lenny Penzica was lead designer on Cybertron Metroplex up until he moved to G.I. Joe, so he was there for the beginning of it. And they're pretty sure that that new Metroplex actually matching that Galaxy Force sizing chart was an intentional thing. The weapon wheel, it doesn't open into the cool battle axe laser gun. They went for that split gimmick instead, but it does have that ratcheted spin. That's where he showed it to us. Also, at that point, Mark Marr mentioned, because he didn't mention it on the Pulse stream, Menasor, if you fold an arm panel back on Menasor's forearm, it's just sculpted on the panel, but the little twin blaster thing he used in a cartoon scene at some point is sculpted under a panel on his forearm. Yeah, DevCon is a G1 character who never had a toy, who often is made out of blurs or sweeps, I think. More so sweeps. Actually, only sweeps now I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, Menasor has a little twin blaster thingy in his arm. Apparently he said something like, I have powers too, or something. I don't remember Season 2 episodes very well. Oh, this is where I snuck in something. Because Amy on Twitter had gotten a BotBots book that had a huge character spread of all this awesome BotBots art. And in the book, I tweeted about this a bit, the credit on the artwork in the published book was art by Hasbro. Which was sort of a bummer. So I asked if they knew who worked on the BotBots art, the character art seen on packaging and in books like that. Apparently, a ton of the BotBots vector art was by Christopher Hicks, who also worked on Thrilling 30 Metroplex and BotShots. But apparently Christopher Hicks is likely responsible for most of the BotBots art that we see. Mark Marr then said he had worked on some BotBots art as well, and I believe that it was confirmed he worked on the pizza race car and the Rice-A-Roni, because those just came out. And it was kind of cool to see the pizza race car. I haven't seen the Netflix cartoon yet, but apparently it's in there, and he was jazzed to see the pizza race car in animation. It was also mentioned apparently BotBots is got into several top 10 ratings lists on Netflix when it launched. So apparently, BotBots cartoon did super well on Netflix, which is cool to hear. I hear it's great. I haven't checked it out yet. On to my last two things here. So in the context of making a wave, just in one price point, so in the context of making like 4 deluxes that are a wave, is sizing balance part of the equation as well, along with those other things we mentioned, like color balance, etc. And Mark Marr said that is taken into consideration, like wave by wave and as a whole, when you look at all of a line as a complete collection. And he said that's also why you'll see stuff like more female characters in the mix, because their scale is different compared to a figure like Tarantulas. Which he was surprised no one had asked anything about. And a lot of us said, like, well, because it's good. There's nothing really to... You did Tarantulas too well to have a Q&A about it. I did then get corrected. I misunderstood something from the Pulse stream. Upcoming WTF and TFW episode 215, we screech for like 5 minutes about, like, I can't believe Tarantulas is a partial of Black Arachnia, but is physically larger in every way. So I mentioned, like, how is that a partial? And they were like, it's not. The only shared component between Tarantulas and Black Arachnia is Black Arachnia's gun. Everything else is completely new. So it is a partial on a technicality. So it is a partial where 99% of the toy is completely new. And so I was like, oh, you all should tune into episode, as I told them at Hasbro, you all should tune into episode 615 of WTF and TFW, where we screech for 5 minutes about the idea that you partialed Black Arachnia into Tarantulas. They mentioned, apparently that was, like, when they talked to John Warden before John Warden moved on to Power Rangers, that was John Warden's initial response to doing Tarantulas, was like, oh yeah, just partial Black Arachnia. And they were all saying, like, she's too small! And so, demonstrably, she was too small! So they did this instead. But the gun's the same, which is bonkers. Also, he showed us something, you've probably seen it by now, in a screen cap. The buzzsaw and that gun can combine together into a buzzsaw attached to Black Arachnia's gun, which is fun. And then the last thing I have here, someone asked if the Stunticon's self-splitting technology would possibly play into future partials and retools. Like, if they were going to take Dragstrip, just crack his back half off and stick an entirely new back half on, would that be a form of partialing that they could do with these toys designed to split in half? Mark Marr confirmed, like, Dragstrip specifically has parts in the front and back end of the car that use the same steel molds, so doing a partial would run through the whole body of the toy. They wouldn't be able to do that kind of split. The mechanism splitting apart was come up with specifically for Menasor. However, while they are not using it as a partialing method now, 2 sets of eyebrows did raise at that notion in a way that, doesn't mean they're gonna, but it means like, oh, that's an interesting idea. So they're gonna think about that. It sounds like, at least for a minute. But yeah, those are all my notes. So that's a spoken word version for an hour of a Twitter thread that I guess I could have written out, but I wanted to talk some more because I haven't talked to people for so long. And gotta fix this up. Getting that talking hair. So yeah. Hope that was enjoyable. These Hasbro Q&As, to set some context for what they are, they seem to just be anyone who's on the PR list. I got on the PR list at Fan Expo when I talked to John Warden and some other Hasbro people and said I do this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, so you're on the PR list. And I was like, nope. And they're like, oh, here, get on it. Yeah, they are generally meant, like, they stayed up front. Like, this is meant to be focused on, in this case, like, all the recent reveals. They mentioned movie masterpiece reveals, to which everyone kind of went like, yeah, we haven't seen an English language press release yet, so we don't really know what to ask you about that. But that's also why, like, you know, you don't go into one of these things thinking like, all right, I'm going to ask them everything coming out next year, or I'm going to say, like, why did you ruin the Prime toys with noses, or stuff like that, because I don't feel there's anything fruitful that can happen from approaching it that way. To me, a little inside baseball how my brain works. If you have a question like that, you do a roundabouts way where you don't ask the thing they can't answer. You ask something that they can answer in a fashion that gives new bits of information without just saying the stuff they can't, if that makes sense. That's kind of how my brain works with this stuff, so that's why I always like try to think of a structured question before I go in. In this case, I just had a structured agenda, which was throw a tweet with like more than 5 people engaging with it at them, saying, look, more than 5 people want this art book! So that was why I did it. Yeah. Transmec, has the topic of shipping bots in alt mode come up? That came up on a Pulse stream, I think. Or a Q&A. I think it was on a Pulse stream. I know I've heard the answer to that, which is that kids engage more with robot mode in package versus alt mode in package, basically. Apparently kids are way more excited to reach out and grab a robot on a toy shelf versus a car, is pretty much the thing. With closed boxes, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. I think with closed boxes, one thing to think about is a notion that I think still sticks around, which is shipping volume, like what volume and shape the box takes up, and whether or not the alt mode is like too long for it versus a robot mode where like there's separatable pieces that can be strewn around next to it. That's why Energon Wing Saber has those bits that come off for no reason. I'm kind of vaguely recalling is that was entirely for it to fit in a shippable box for its price point. The head stealing thing is because people did it with a LeBron James toy, and now people just do it and call it the LeBron James thing. That's all I can think of. Is they're trying to continue a stupid meme from a couple years ago now, I guess. How many years ago was that Space Jam movie? 1? It's a couple. Dustbuster, thank you. Been a bit busy this month with various offline things, but still got stuff in the works as always. But yeah, that's what was up with that Hasbro call. So thank you all for chilling on the stream, hearing me yammer through my notes. Thank you all for putting up with this. Stay up there. Thank you for putting up with that. Don't know how long that thing was there. You know, me and my whole silly mess behind me. I don't know what else to do, so I think I'm gonna take off. I gotta go. I got a box to pick up, which I think is some Legacy toys. So I'll have opinions on those later on. Other people were on that call too, so I'm sure they have info up there. TFU info was there, Radio Free Cybertron, Transmissions, TFW 2005, Cybertron, T-Formers, a couple other people who didn't have site names attached to them. I am blanking now because I've been talking too long, but there were a lot of people there, and they probably have all tweeted stuff as well. They've all, put up their versions of notes. If I missed anything, they probably have some stuff. Add mine to theirs, basically. And I'll what was this? Design philosophy for Kingdom Dinosaur. Yeah, someday I want to be able to see one of those distant things. If I ever get like 4 questions, is like, I know a couple paleontologists who like Transformers. You should just talk to when you do dinosaurs. But Scorp, you are marked as having attended. I got you on my list. Good job. I'll talk to you all later. I don't remember how the timing on this works, so I'm going to say I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to stare at you for a few seconds. Whilst I finish off my La Croix. So I'm going to stop. Leave! still see you. I still see you kicking around. Leave!